Hi! Finally, within this section, we're going to attack the networks and we're trying to crack their passwords. We're going to see some various encryption models. So if you're using WEP or if you're using WPA, it doesn't matter. We're going to see them all and see how to crack those networks. And at the end of the section, of course, we're going to discuss how to make ourselves safe against these hacker attacks. So now, if you're ready, let's get started.
Hi! Within this lecture, we're going to see different kinds of encryptions that we use in routers, in modems, in networks. So basically, routers encrypt our data, encrypt our packets, encrypt our requests and responses from the internet in order to have a safe working environment. If there was no encryption, we could just get all the data going on inside of a network, inside of a router, with only sniffing data without having the password. Of course, that wouldn't be safe, so all the modern routers in their daily routine use some kind of an encryption. Of course, there are some routers, there are some networks, they don't use any encryption at all. They're open networks, like when you go to a Starbucks or when you go to an airport, or there is a free Wi-Fi at some place like a restaurant. They may use some open connection, open network without any password, okay? And they're not actually safe. So you can connect to those network and do the post attacks like man in the middle that we're going to learn in the following section. But for right now, in the section, we're going to focus on different kinds of encryptions and different kinds of cracking techniques against those encryption models. So we have WEP and we have WPA and WPA2. So let me take you to a website, okay? And you don't have to do that. I just opened this as an example. So let me close this and show it to you. So there are different kinds of encryptions, and at this age, at 2019, we only have 3 major encryption models. So we have WEP, which is wired equivalent privacy, okay? And of course, you can find and read the technical terms and technical explanations of WEP, but basically, this is the old way of protecting your network, okay? So this was introduced like 20 years ago, and this was thought to be safe at that age, at that year, but it turned out not to be safe, and we can crack WEP only within minutes. So it is not safe. I'm just going to show you in the following lecture how we can crack it. And then later on, they introduced WPA, okay, and WPA2 to make this process, make this routine actually safer. And we still have techniques to crack the passwords of both WEP and WPA. And we're going to learn both of them. We're going to learn how to crack WEP as well. Maybe you would think that this is 20 years old, why are we learning this? Because there are some networks still using that WEP encryption in the world. And it's actually very easy to crack this, and we're going to learn it, just not to skip any idea, any information in this course. And later on, we're going to move to WPA. So most probably in your own house you use WPA or WPA2, and we use the same technique to crack the WPA and WPA2. It really doesn't matter, but we use a different technique in order to crack WEP. So within this next lecture, we're going to focus on WEP, and if you want to practice this on your own, you will need to go to your router settings, okay, and change your encryption to be WEP. I will show you how to do that at the end of this section, where we discuss how to make your router safe. But basically, you will have to go to administrator access of your router and change the encryption. And if you don't have to do that, you can go and watch the last lecture. And of course, anytime you can call your internet provider to make them change your encryption model as well. So if you don't want to practice WEP, of course, you're more than welcome to watch the section and just take notes. But we're gonna learn how to do all of this in order within the following lecture. Hi! Within this lecture, we're going to see how to crack WEP encrypted routers passwords, okay? So we're going to use AeroDumpNG as we did before, but now we're going to introduce a new tool called AirCrack-NG. So these are all related: AirPlay, AeroDump, AirCrack, and we use it for the same purpose. We're going to do some network penetration testing, and we're going to gather the password of some router. And as I said before, WEP is not safe and can be cracked within minutes if we have the optimum conditions in order to do that. And we're going to see how to get these optimum conditions later on. But for right now, remember that WEP is easier to crack compared to WPA, and I'm going to tell you the reason behind it as well. So let me open my Kali Linux. Of course, I'm connected with bridge adapter, and I have my USB Wi-Fi card plugged in, and I can just use this USB Wi-Fi card in monitor mode. So let me confirm this. So I'm opening a new terminal here, and first thing to do is just to run ifconfig in order to see whether my interface is up or down. So as you can see, I don't see my WLAN O, okay? So I have to make sure that my USB Wi-Fi card is plugged in so that I can take this into my monitor mode. As you can see now, right now I'm connected to my ETH0 with wired connection. So this is what we do in our NAT network. But as I plugged in my USB Wi-Fi card, as you can see, I get the WLAN O. So I'm going to take this WLAN O into monitor mode and use it to run AeroDumpNG. And before we do that, of course, we have to run airmon-ng start WLAN O to take this into monitor mode. If airmon-ng doesn't work for you, of course, you can use the alternative method that we have seen before. If I run iwconfig right now, I will see my mode is indeed monitor right now. So I can use AeroDumpNG from now on using WLAN O-mon interface, right? So you know how to do that, right? So you have to write AeroDumpNG WLAN O-mon, and it will start gathering information from around routers. So let me just make this a little bit bigger so we can see it better. Maybe you have seen that my router is here. So Pulp Fiction, I've changed my encryption to be WEP, and we can see it from here as well, right? Pulp Fiction use WEP encryption. If you use WPA or WPA2, this technique won't work because this is specific to WEP. So I'm going to focus on this line here. I'm going to just gather information from this specific router. So remember what we have to do. We have to specify the BSS ID. And how do we get BSS ID? We just select it from here and right click, copy, and paste it in here. So this is our BSS ID. We have to specify the channel, right? So we can see the channel from here as well. So I'm currently in channel 9, right? So let's see, yeah, I'm in 9. And then later on, we have to write out a file because we're going to use that file with aircrack. And as we did before, I will write dash dash write, and I think I missed one dash from here, right? So BSSID channel and write. And then we have to specify the name of this file, okay? So you can choose any name, but choose something relevant. So I'm going to call this WEP crack, okay? So later on I'm going to look for wepcrack.cap. So later on I have to specify my interface. Now I'm ready to run this. So this is gathering information, and this is gathering information from the network that I want to. As you can see, now I see the clients that are connected to Pulp Fiction. And since this is gathering information right now, it's also saving to that .cap file. And I will use this .cap file in order to crack the password. Right now, as you can see, there is a data column in here, and we're gathering data. And we are gathering something called initializing vectors, IVs. And aircrack uses those IVs to compare with each other and then find the password. And I'm trying to open a new terminal, but I cannot manage. Let me try from here. Yeah, say new terminal. Because as this is running in the background, I will have to call aircrack at the same time, simultaneously, okay? So open a new terminal here and run aircrack ng, and later on you have to specify the .cap file. So I believe this will be wapcrack01.cap. Of course, we have to confirm this. If I go to home, I will see that this is really wapcrack01cap, but let me go to computer and then root. Okay, maybe you cannot reach home from left pane, but as you can see, this is indeed named as wapcrack01.cap. So you have to write this exactly as the same in here, wapcrack-01.cap. Then you can just hit enter. And now as you can see, it just compares the IVs, and if it fails to find the password, it just tries with the next IVs. So more data we have, easier it is to crack the password of WEP. And in order to have more data, we should have traffic in our router. As an example, you can just go to other computers on phones in your own network and try to download something or go to YouTube and watch some videos in order to generate traffic right now. And later on, we will see how to generate fake traffic as well. But for right now, I suggest you go to your phones that are connected to the same network and watch some videos in order to generate data. As you can see, it went to the other set of IVs, so it failed with 10,000 IVs, but it will continue to look for the password within the next set of data as well. And it will find generally between 20,000 or 25,000 IVs. And by the way, this technique won't work on WPA because in WEP we have the same set of strings as a key, but in WPA they generate some random strings in order to make it safer. And as you can see, we found the key. Okay, so this is the password of the router. Now we can connect to the router at this point. And I will show you how to do that as well. I'm going to stop it because we don't need any more data with Control C, of course. And we have to get the password from here. All you have to do is just actually lose these columns. And then you can enter the password with A1, B2 and everything. Now I don't see any connection because right now I'm in the monitor mode, and as you can see, we cannot connect to the internet with monitor mode. Then I can try to go back to the managed mode, but I believe the best way to do this is actually to restart the computer at this point. So let me take a note of this key from here, okay, and copy it and paste it into a live path or something and save it to my documents or desktop, wherever you want to save it. Okay, I'm going to call this web cracked and close it down and close down all the way up, and then restart the Kali Linux from scratch. And you don't need to do this necessarily, because you may try to go to the managed mode and then just restart the connection with service network manager restart and try to connect to the internet with our newly found password. But I prefer to do this after I do some penetration testing and after I crack password. I believe this is kind of a habit that I need to overcome. So let me give my username and a password and then maximize this window in order to test our newly found password. Since we freshly opened this Kali Linux, now I should be in the managed mode, right? So if I go to here, I will see that my Wi-Fi is not connected. Now I will turn down this, not Siri, but I turn down the wired network. Okay, so I'm not connected to the wired, but I will try to connect to Wi-Fi network with Pulp Fiction. If I click connect, it will ask me for a key, and yeah, I believe I should have done this first. So I'm going to open my cracked found key and I will use this, but first I have to lose the columns inside. Okay, so let me delete all of this and I will just get this phrase here, A1 B2 C3, and I will copy this. Okay, and I will close this down or just go to here and try to connect to this Pulp Fiction network and say connect, and then paste it in here and just hit run. As you can see, now I'm connected. Let me try, let me cancel this. Let me try to ping Google to see if I really have connection. As you can see, I got the response back. It means that I am connected to the internet. So let's stop here, and within the next lecture we're going to see what if we don't have any traffic and how can we generate those fake traffic in order to collect IVs. Hi, within this lecture we're going to see how to fake authenticate ourselves to a router. And why do we want to do that? In the previous lecture we discussed that we need to gather some IVs, some datas, in order to crack the WEP passwords, okay? And we were lucky because some of the clients that are connected to that router, some of the devices, just ran some YouTube videos, right? They watched YouTube videos, they downloaded something, so there was some traffic going on in that router. But we cannot risk that, okay? We have to have a way in order to have some traffic, in order to generate even some fake traffic in that router. And we can inject some fake packets into that router, but in order to do that we need to be authenticated. And in order to be authenticated, we need the actual password itself. And this is the main reason that we are trying to do all of these things, right? So in the first place, we need to find the password in order to connect to this network. So we have something called fake authentication tool. Okay, we're going to use this and we're going to fakely authenticate ourselves to that network. and we cannot connect to the internet using that network, but we can inject some packets doing that. So AirPlay-NG actually provides us this opportunity. We use the fake authentication method inside of AirPlay-NG, and we associate our device to that router so that we can inject some fake packets, fake traffic, and it will allow us to collect IVs. So let me close this down and try to go into my Kali Linux. So username and password, then I will sign in. And later on, let me maximize this window as usual so we can see it better. Okay. And of course, I'm using the usual setup, like my USB Wi-Fi card is now plugged in, but I'm not connected because I will go into the monitor mode anyway, and I'm using Airmon NG in order to go into the monitor mode. As usual, Airmon NG, and I will say WLAN O. Okay, start WLAN O. It will put me in the monitor mode, and I can confirm this of course by running iwconfig, okay, and say not wiconfig but iwconfig, and I will see that my interface is right now WLAN mon, and my mode is the monitor mode. Then next thing to do is to grab the general information about the router that we are targeting. And of course, easiest way to do this is to run airdump-ng, okay, airdump-ng WLAN mon. It will show us the routers that are around us. So let me make this into a little bit bigger screen. As you can see, we have this Pulp Fiction network here, which uses the WEP encryption model. So we're going to focus on that. And we have seen how to do this before, right? So we can see the encryption model, we can see the channel and everything. Now it's time to fakely authenticate ourselves. But first, I'm going to run airdump-ng specific to that Pulp Fiction, because we're going to monitor our process along the way. So we can see the connected devices when we run airdump-ng for a specific network, remember? And we're going to see if we are really authenticated after we run AirPlay. So let me specify the MAC address of Pulp Fiction. Of course, we can get this from here. So this is our BSS ID. Let me copy this and paste in here. And then later on, remember what you have to do. You have to specify the channel as well. So the channel is 9 in this case. And then we have to specify whether we want to write out some test file or some file actually. So let me call this fake authentication, and then specify the interface itself, which is WLAN mon in my case. Once I hit enter, it starts the airdump-ng against this network. So now I can see the devices that are connected to this network down below, and I see the datas in here. As you can see, I don't have many datas at this case. So nobody's going to YouTube, nobody's downloading something, so I cannot generate enough IVs to crack the WEP. So what do? I use AirPlay-ng to authenticate myself. And then later on, we will inject some packets, of course. So let me write this, AirPlay-ng -- fake auth, and I'm going to say 0. And this stands for reassociation time, okay? So it will reassociate me every 0 seconds. Actually, if I say 0, it won't try to reassociate me, but if I say something like 6000, it will try to reassociate me every 6 seconds. So I'm going to say 0 for that, and then later on you will have to say -a to specify the MAC address, BSS ID, and then you have to say -h, okay, in order to specify your own MAC address of your Wi-Fi card. So in order to get your own MAC address, you can just run ifconfig, okay, ifconfig wlan on actually in this point, and I believe our MAC address in here shows up in this section, but let me run another command in order to confirm this, okay. So I will run IP address, okay, ADDR. So here we can see it better. Yeah, I believe they are the same. So this is our MAC address. So let me copy this and then close this down and paste it in here. So this is my hardware, and I'm going to associate this with our access point, and of course I have to specify my interface as well. And once I do that, as you can see, my device is added to that list. Now I'm fakely authenticated in this router. I still cannot connect to it since I don't know the password yet, but I can now inject data, send some packets to it in order to generate some traffic, in order to gather some IVs. And that's what we are going to do within the next lecture. Hi! Within this lecture, we're going to see how to crack a WEP password when we don't have enough traffic going on inside of that router. And we know how to get ourselves authenticated to those networks, but we don't know how to inject some fake traffic. And we're going to learn that in this lecture as well. As you can see, I don't have any Wi-Fi connected at this point because I'm going to put my Wi-Fi card to monitor mode anyway. So I'm running airmon and gstart wlan o, and it will just change my interface name to be wlan o mon. If I run iwconfig, I can confirm this. I have my wlan o mon and in mode monitor. Now I can run airdump ng, of course specifying wlan o mon, and it will try to get some information from the routers around us. And of course we're going to focus on our own network, which is Pulp Fiction, which uses the WEP encryption model. So let me specify the BSS ID, and I'm doing this fast because this is like the 5th time we are doing this, okay. This is my BSS ID, and then later on I will specify my channel to be 9, and then later on I'm going to write out a file, and I believe we have a lot of files in here, so let me delete all of this because we're going to do the same thing again. I don't need any confusion right now, so let me delete those files as well so we can start clear screen. So let me name this as ARP play, okay, ARP replay, and you will see why I call this ARP replay later on. And I have to specify my interface and hit enter. Now I'm getting information from this router, from this network. As you can see, I don't have any data going on in here. So I have some data, but it's not enough for us. It's not enough to gather some IVs. So the next thing to do is actually try to run AirPlay, okay, AirPlay ng fake authentication. So let me say fake authentication 0 for reassociation timing, and then say -a MAC address, and then say -h MAC address of our own. So let me get this MAC address from IP address, okay. Let me try to copy this from here. So this is my MAC address. Let me select this and copy this, and close this down and paste it in here. And then later on, of course, we have to specify our own interface. So as you can see, I misspelled this AirPlay because I have to run AirPlay ng. So this is AirPlay ng, and now I am authenticated, so I see my own MAC address in the station column in here. So next thing to do, let me run the same command again, but I'm going to change the fake auth to be ARP replay. And this is a way to inject some packets, and rather than saying A, just say B, and you don't have to change anything else. Actually, you can just hit enter. It will try to inject some data to this network. If it does not work, you can try to fake authenticate yourself again. If it does not work, you can try to go back to manage mode and monitor mode once again in order to try this one more time. But if your Wi-Fi card supports packet injection, then this will have to work. Okay, you don't have to do anything else. And at this point, you will have to wait until data starts going up. Then you can run aircrack ng in order to crack the WEP password. So this is how it works. You only use AirPlay in order to run the fake authentication and then ARP replay in the same terminal. Now, since this is going on, I'm going to open, but I don't see any data going up. Yeah, we lost our authentication at this moment, as you can see. Now I will try to re-authenticate myself using the same command in a third terminal. Okay, my AirPlay is going on, my AeroDump is going on. Now let me run AirPlay one more time, but I'm going to use fake authentication methods again, and I will say fake authentication, okay, and then you can say 8 or 0 in order to test some other numbers. And I'm going to copy all of this from here and paste it in here, and if I hit enter, now I can get authenticated one more time. And since AirPlay ng is running again in here, I will wait to see my data is going up, and after the data has gone up, you can just run aircrack ng within a new terminal. So you have to wait until this works for you, and then you can run aircrack ng, of course. And how do we do that? Remember, we have to say aircrack-ng, and we're going to just specify the .cap file that we have created with AeroDump. So this is now ARP replay 01, okay, ARP replay 01.cap for me. It will start to work on those IVs and try to gather our password. And of course, if you cannot find a way to inject some data, this will eventually turn out for you, because somebody is eventually going to use that internet connection. However, this is easier to do that actually. And as you can see, I now managed to find the key, and I changed the key to show you that we really cracked this time. And now I can just lose the columns here and use this as a password to connect to Wi-Fi WEP encrypted Wi-Fi network. And now, actually at this point, we are done with WEP encryption. We learned the details of WEP encryption and how to decrypt it. Now we're going to stop here, and from now on, we're going to focus on WPA encryption and how to crack those networks. And we're going to do that within the next lecture. Hi, Within this lecture, we're going to discuss how WPA and WPA2s actually work. So we have seen it's very easy to crack WEP encrypted routers, but it's really hard to crack WPA actually because we need a handshake and we need a word list in order to do that. And what's a handshake and what's a word list? So every time a client connects to that router, there is a four-way handshake occurred from the process, okay? So we need to capture this handshake in order to test some words, in order to test some possible passwords against this handshake, okay? So we're going to create a word list to ourselves. We're going to have possible passwords, possible information on that word list. And at this point, I believe you understand it's harder to crack the WPA password because there might be millions of possibilities for passwords, okay? So if a user uses an 8-character password, it's relatively easy to crack this, but if they use something like 9 characters, 10 characters, 12 characters, it should get harder for us because we're going to try passwords one by one, of course automatically, but again one by one in order to get the real password. We're going to discuss this again later on, but it's really suggested to have a narrow word list. So you have to narrow your possibilities down. So if you're trying to hack into a restaurant called Mark's restaurant, for instance, there is a high possibility that the word Mark is on the password, like Mark 123 or Mark 2015, I don't know. You have to work on that. You have to guess some assumptions, you have to have some assumptions, and you have to build your strategy on that in order to narrow down your possibilities, because if you have like millions of passwords in your word list, in your dictionary attack, it will take like 1 day, 2 days, or some days or months actually to complete the process. And we're going to see all of them, don't worry. We're going to see how to get a handshake and how to create a word list, but we're going to do all of those things in the next lecture. Hi! Within this lecture, we're going to see how to capture a handshake. As I said before, we need a handshake and a word list in order to try and crack the password of a WPA. Of course, we're going to use a monitor mode Wi-Fi card. So I'm running airmon-ng start WLAN 01. So if I can spell it out, it would be great. As you can see, once I run airmon-ng start WLAN 0, it should take me to the monitor mode. Let me run iwconfig. Yeah, I'm in the monitor mode with my WLAN 0 mon interface. So I will run aerodump-ng. Why? Because aerodump actually takes care of this handshake capturing thing for us. And let me run this and show you how it's done. So as you can see now, I started to gather information once more, and I have Pulp Fiction in here. So I changed the name to be Pulp Fiction WPA, and I use WPA encryption. And it really doesn't matter whether I use WPA or WPA2 because we use the same technique in order to crack those. So let me run aerodump-ng BSSID thing because I'm going to focus on this specific network here. So I'm going to specify the BSSID, and I'm going to specify the channel as 9, and I'm going to write out these files. Okay, I'm going to say write. I'm going to choose a new file name for me. So let me say handshake, for instance. Okay, handshake file, and I'm going to specify WLAN on mom. And once I hit enter, it starts capturing packets from this specific network. Now I see the clients connected to that network and I have everything going on. As I explained before, in order to have a handshake within a network, a client, a device, must connect to that network. So every time a device is connected, there is a handshake occurring, okay? So we can wait until someone connects to that network, or we can de-authenticate them and wait for them to reconnect. If we use a very low de-authentication packet, the client wouldn't even know. So they will get deconnected for a second and they won't understand something going on in background, and we would capture those handshakes. So let me show you how it works. If I run a new terminal from here and just if I can choose a one station and de-authenticate it, then I can get my handshake as I want to. So you know how to de-authenticate, right? So maybe you can stop here and do it on your own, pause the video and try to do it on your own. I hope you managed to get it. You have to run airplay-ng and then say --d-auth, and for packets we used 10,000 before, but now I'm going to use something like 5 or 10, and we will just send 5 or 10 d-auth packets and the client wouldn't even know, okay? So maybe you remember the rest of the command. You have to specify the MAC address of the router, and we use -a to do that. And remember, A stands for access point, okay? So access point and the router are the same thing. We can use those terms interchangeably. So all you have to do is just add -a here and copy the BSSID of our router from here. Say double right click and copy, and right click and paste it in here. Then we have to specify which client that we are targeting, and let me just get the first one as an example and say -c to paste this, and then finally I have to specify my WLAN I'm on, my interface here, and hit enter. As you can see, now I have sent those packets and we got the handshake. It got disconnected and reconnected, and aerodump-ng got this handshake for us. And since we are writing this to a file, now this handshake is written in my .cap file. I can use those .cap file here, handshake 01.cap file, in order to run a dictionary attack against this network. Let's stop here and do this within the next lecture. Hi! Within this lecture, we're going to see how to create a word list for our WPA attack. So we already have gathered our first requirement for WPA decryption, which is our handshake. And within this lecture, we're going to focus on the second requirement, which is the word list itself. So we're going to use a tool called Crunch in order to do that. This will give us a list, a text file that have the possible passwords for our attack, okay? And we're going to specify those passwords when we create this file. If you look at the usage of Crunch, it will ask you the minimum characters and maximum characters, okay, like 8-character password, 10-character password, and then it will ask you the characters itself. Of course, you can use all the characters in your keyboard, but it's always better to narrow down your possibilities. And we have the pattern in order to narrow it down even further. So in this example, you see that the password will start with M and it will have 3 characters in between, and the password will end with P. Later on, we just specify the name of the file and it generates the word list for us. So let me show you with an example because it will be much more clear. So open your Kali Linux, and Crunch comes pre-installed with Kali, so you don't have to do anything else actually. If you type Crunch, it will show you the current version or the documentation of the Crunch. As you can see, at least we have to specify the minimum and maximum characters that we want to use with Crunch. So I'm going to say Crunch and 8 to 9, okay? Of course, maybe you want to use Crunch with 8 to 16 characters, but it will generate a very big file for you. Then you will have some trouble even storing that file in your computer. Of course, you can search for alternative methods, for example, not to save the file, but just run the Crunch without saving the file and trying the passwords, but again, it would be just too difficult for you to try all those passwords. It will take so much time. So it's better to specify the characters like this, XY123, and work on that. So if I do this, it will just generate a word list for me with 8 to 9 characters containing only XY123 characters, okay? So XY and 123. So it would be something like XXXYYY12, XXYY1231. So all of these possibilities will be in our word list. If you say -o and just name this file, it will generate the word list for you. If I type ls, I can see the test word list file in here. Now if I say cat test word list, it will get the content and display it for me on my terminal. As you can see, now I have all the possibilities related to 8 to 9 characters containing XY123 values. So if my password is in fact in this word list, then I can crack it. So since I have my word list right now, and since I got my handshake in the previous lecture, now we are ready to test WPA attack on our Kali Linux. So let's stop here and do that within the next lecture. Hi! Within this lecture, we're going to test and crack our WPA encrypted router password with the handshake file and with the word list that we have created before. Actually, it's very easy to do that after this point. Since we have those word list and handshake files, all we have to do is just run aircrack-ng one more time. So type aircrack-ng, and we're going to use this handshake.cap file again, okay? And I'm going to say handshake file01.cap. Of course, it has to be exact. And then later on, we have to specify the word list that we have created. And as you can see, they're on the same folder, my handshake and the word list on the same folder. And so I can just write -w test word list, and it will start to run this for me. And as you can see, it immediately found the key for me. So my password was XXYY123. And of course, that's why I chose those specific numbers. I have chosen the values of X, Y, and 123 to be in my characters when I created that word list. And maybe you right now understand that it's harder to crack the WPA because if you cannot have a strategy narrowing down your word list, then you might wait too long. Then you might spend like hours or days to test all the possible passwords in order to crack a simple password. Again, you have to create your own strategy in order to come up with a narrowed down word list to make this work. Otherwise, it will take so much time. And as you can see, it's actually harder to crack the WPA and WPA2 passwords when we compare it with WEP encryption. So let's stop here, and within the next lecture we're going to discuss how to make our routers safer in order to fight with these hacker attacks. Hi! Within this section we discussed how hackers actually decrypt the passwords of WEP and WPA encrypted routers so that they can connect to our network and they can steal our data. In fact, within the next lecture, within the next section, we're going to see how hackers can steal the information easily when they are connected to a network. And in order to prevent this from happening, we need to stop them before they continue and connect to our network. So they shouldn't be able to decrypt our password, gather our password, okay? And best way to do that is to have a safe password, safe encrypted router. So in order to change your router settings, you have to go to your administrator account. And in order to do that, just open your browser when you're connected to the internet with your router, with your machine. Just type 192.168.1.1 to your browser and hit enter. It will pop open your administrator dashboard of your router. If it doesn't open, you have to call your internet provider and ask them how I can connect to my dashboard, because I need to change my password, I need to change my router name, I need to change my encryption model or anything, okay? They will tell you how to do that. Because if you don't know, if you didn't do this before, then there is a good chance that you don't know your username and password as well. So username is most of the time admin, but maybe you don't know your password and you have to ask to your internet provider anyway. If you can get this admin and password username, just log into your account, and this dashboard may look different in your case because they look different for each internet provider, each router model. They will look different obviously, and they will look different on every version, but it really doesn't matter because all we are going to do is find the settings. They all have settings page, right? So I'm clicking on my home network here, then I'm going to go to my WLAN settings. And you have to find something called WLAN encryption. If you open that up, you will see that you can change your router name from here, and you can actually choose your encryption settings. Right now I use WPA and WPA2. Of course I can use WEP, but if that wouldn't be safe. So it isn't wise to use WEP in this day and age. So use WPA or WPA2, and you have to use a complex password. So everyone recommends complex password, but in this time you have yourself seen the easier the password, the easier to crack it with wordless attacks. If you come up with a long and complex password with special characters or something, then it would get much more harder for hackers to crack it. So use WPA2, use long and complex passwords. Don't ever try to give your router password to anywhere other than your real connection area in your computer. For example, you shouldn't write down your router password to any web form in the browser. So maybe some hackers try to get your password by tricking you into just giving your password to some web form as well, and you shouldn't fall for this trick since you know how hackers work at this moment, and you have to configure your router's settings properly in order to protect yourself from the previous attacks that we have learned. So let's stop here, and within the next section we're going to discuss the attacks after a hacker connects to a network, that is post-connection attacks.
Hi! Within this section, you have learned how to attack the networks to crack their password. And cracking the password is only a phase. Now, since you cracked their password, you can be connected to the network. And this is what it matters. Because within the next section, we're going to see how to attack the computers or any device on the same network. And after this section, you're more than welcome to use your NAT network, so you won't need your USB Wi-Fi card anymore. So now if you're ready, let's move on to the next section.